Yeah, Myles Garrett, he loves to eat Built Bars. Can confirm he got some for Christmas using code LOCKEDON15. And as we transition into Browns Talk, we'd like to remind everybody that Browns Talk is sponsored by Cuyahoga Community College. Tri-C supports the students financially, professionally, and personally, and opens up the door for endless possibilities. Tri-C is where futures start. Start now. Classes begin January 17th, 2023.
Most of my friends went there.
Again, Anthony's from Parma. That's why he says Cuyahoga. I feel like only people from Parma say
Cuyahoga. It's Cuyahoga. Come on.
Tri-C, great college.
Great
college. Myles Garrett, guys, you know, the news broke when we were on the show yesterday, G, and now that you've had 24 hours to let it settle in, give us your first thoughts on Myles Garrett being held out of that first series.
Well, that was the first shot. It's the Cold War. You know, I talked about this a little bit, and everyone likes to kind of, you know, tamp down. It's not nothing much here. But let me tell you this, man. Kevin Stefanski and Myles Garrett have had a smoldering Cold War for a while. You talk about the incidents in which Myles Garrett, would call out the offense or the defense and saying that you're not having no adjustments. He's been very vocal about certain defensive adjustments. He's also been a dude that will talk to the media. So when you look at what he said or when you look at what Coach Stefanski said, and he came out and said, "Yeah, that's my choice." I think this is the first of something that you're gonna have to watch for the next year or so, because Myles Garrett, or whatever the case, I think Mary Kay has already come out and said it was due to something like maybe not reporting something as far as his illness or something. That seems to me as low-key passive-aggressive energy. That's something you could do. Like, that's something that, you know, if there's a protocol towards what you got to talk about or report to somebody, that's something he probably could have did, right? But my problem is, or my thought process is, Myles Garrett, like a lot of other people, do not like what's going on inside the Browns coaching staff. So, and I've said it before, what's the best way to get under a coach's skin is start doing your own stuff. And you'll start to get that attention. And that's the way you saying, protesting, I don't like this. You know, and it's almost showing away, well, look, he's sitting me down for not reporting this, that, and the third. He didn't say Joe Woods down nowhere. And he didn't mention Joe Woods by name. So he's just setting up like, look, you have a lot of other things to worry about besides me being ill. I show up, I get 15 sacks a year regardless. Is this the hill you want to die on? I think this is a part of a bigger conversation as long as this thing keeps going forward.
Mike, what say you?
I don't think it matters all that much, frankly. I think that it's overblown. I know that we aren't supposed to be in the know about what happened, but it's an internal thing. I don't see why this seems like one of those things that it just, I know we feel like we're some duty to get the truth out about these things, but what good usually comes of that? Sometimes it's better off if they obviously don't want to talk about it. Let's just let her lie. What do you say? I mean, if it becomes a recurrent thing, then you have to do something about it, obviously. I think though what's interesting is what could it have been if he got any sort of disciplinary action? What could it have been that was worse than him speeding and wrecking his car during a pivotal part of the season? Because he didn't receive any kind of a punishment for that. So
yeah, that we know of.
I mean, that we know of. Right. Well, we didn't see it.
No.
Obviously, as soon as he was healthy again, he didn't get set for one snap for that. And so, whatever it was, apparently there was something recurrent that they finally had to address. So that might lead towards being a speeding ticket, maybe, or something like that. But even that's just reckless speculation on my part. But it is strange that he didn't receive any kind of punishment for that. Which, even at the time, I know that it's very hard to sound like anybody should take me seriously when I'm wearing this kimono and these pants. But no, you shouldn't anyway.
We didn't even address the kimono, by the way.
No, I know. Well, what else goes with these pants?
That's true.
I own this kimono before Christmas. No, but like even at that time, I remember and you guys kind of gave me the business just a little bit because I was just like mad at Myles Garrett for doing that. Right. And that was when the city was still in its like phase where we were just like, we were sort of acting like he was a hero for getting into a car wreck. We're like as if that he was attacked by a road or something like that. You know, we were just like, can you believe that Medina road just came out of nowhere and almost hurt our best player? But in reality, guy was doing 100 down a farm road in Medina, could have hurt somebody else, could have been way worse. But we were all just so grateful at that point that he wasn't injured that we just sort of like just forgot to like get mad at him for it. So maybe it has something to do with that. But regardless, I'm fine with just letting it lie. At this point in the season, do we really need to? What do you think?
Well, here's my take on the situation, guys. First of all, there's a lot of people all year that have been getting mad at Kevin Stefanski. And there's a lot of things to get mad at Kevin Stefanski about that are legit. His job, he did not do a good job this year. If forget grades, if I have to go thumbs up or thumbs down, simple like that, on the job Kevin Stefanski did in 2022, I give him a thumbs down. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I would give him a thumbs down for 2 out of 3 years. And if it becomes 3 out of 4, then he loses his job. But he may lose it before that. However, in this particular case, many of us have been saying, where's the accountability? Why is there no accountability? Well, in this case, there is some level of accountability for his star player. And now people are mad. Some people are mad. I'm not so sure if you're mad. Are you mad that he got suspended, G?
No, that's
not suspended, but benched for a series.
I don't really care. Like, I mean, if you want to bench him for a series,
yeah.
I think more of these players' behavior is undercover protesting.
But to me, and you may be right, to me that's disappointing. And whether Myles Garrett probably doesn't give a rat's ass whether I'm disappointed in him or not, but I find it disappointing because clearly Myles Garrett has made at least 2 bad decisions this year. He was recklessly driving that led to his accident, and I, like many, just gave it a pass because, like, you know, most of us have done it.
Right.
Most of us have recklessly driven. But when we do it, like with Myles Garrett, it's a bad choice. I have been a reckless driver at times. It was a bad choice by me. I got lucky that I didn't flip my car. Same thing here. Myles Garrett was being a reckless driver. It was a bad choice. Now, we all make bad choices sometimes. Now, but what happened in this case, and we don't know exactly what happened. Yes, Mary Kay is reporting that he was sick. Maybe there was some lack of communication here. We've heard some other things behind the scenes. Who knows exactly what's happening? But if Myles Garrett is pissed because he has no help on the defensive line, and he's been here a number of years, and they've not really given him any help, and he's frustrated the team's losing, and he wants to go to the playoffs, that I get. Totally.
Right.
If at the end of this season he wants to demand a trade, if I'm the Browns, I wouldn't trade him, but if he wants to demand a trade, that I get. Whatever. But if your protest is to not show up or miscommunicate the week of a game when, as slim as their chances were, the playoffs were still on the line, to me, that's being a bad leader.
Yeah.
He's not just a teammate. He is a leader. He is a captain of this team. And that doesn't mean now I think he's a bad guy or a bad human being or any of that. I don't think we need to make it bigger than it is. But I think he made a bad choice here. And I think it's important that Kevin Stefanski did what he did because in life, too often, whether it's sports, politics, whatever it is, media, stars get away with stuff that the regular Joes don't. And I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. Whether it's nepotism, sexism, classism, right? Rich people get away with stuff that poor people don't. Racism, all the isms you want, right? These things play a big factor. And in reality, I understand that's just always the way it's going to be. It sucks. I don't like it. But things, in a perfect world, things should be fair.
Right.
If I'm on a football team and I do something that violates team rules and I'm the 53rd man on the roster, I should get the same penalty as the number 1 guy on the roster. There shouldn't be a harsher penalty for me because I'm the 53rd guy. It should be the same thing. Now, obviously, things don't generally work that way.
The way life goes.
It is the way life goes. But if I was in charge of the world, it wouldn't go that way.
I'm going to give you an example of this.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an example. When I was at OU, we went 1-10 one year. Worst year of my life. Now I came out of high school. Our existing coaching staff, every one of them had left and went to Wake Forest.
Right.
They left one coach behind, and I was in between thinking like, okay, do I want to transfer or stay here? I decided they talked me into staying there.
Right.
So I'm there. We get our coach, who was a previous coach, and we go 1-10. After we go 1-10, I'm rethinking a bunch of stuff. It was the most miserable year of my life. Like, I didn't know what offense we was running. The defense, they completely switched. By the time we got to the second year under this coach, they brought in another coach that was my D-line coach, and he didn't know anything. He was like he had just came from some high school. He played safety. And he's telling me, like, about D-line. And I'm like, bro, this dude has no clue. And then there was a time it just dawned on me. I'm screwed. I am completely screwed here. These guys, we have no chance of winning. The game plans was rudimentary. We was running the ball option on 4th and 9. We were getting blown out. So you know what I started to do? I started to do little things that I felt like didn't count. They would be like, all right, you're not allowed wearing your socks high. I go get the longest socks I can find.
On principle.
Just on principle. They're like, well, we said you couldn't wear socks. And I remember going to an office and being like, you worry about my socks, but your coordinator is calling the worst calls of all time. They're unorganized. They don't know what you're doing, and you're worried about my socks.
So you're saying they're reacting. That's your theory, is they're reacting to poor management and coaching and leadership.
Yeah, so when you got somebody in front of you and you watch that game plan and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt there's no way we can win doing this, and you keep losing and you keep losing and you keep losing, and you're looking at your head coach like, please do something about this. Get this dude the heck up out of here. And he doesn't do anything. Then you start to look at him and say, you're sacrificing my career. You're sacrificing the well-being of the team. And you won't get rid of him, and you don't even have a good reason not to. So what reason do I got to report to you? I'm not reporting nothing.
But in the end, in this case, they're still fighting for the playoffs. And he's letting down his teammates. When you're a captain, G, you have a responsibility to your teammates to be a good leader, to be a good example. I get it. And he's spoken out, and I don't have a problem when he speaks out and he's critical of the coaches. I don't have a problem with that. And I wouldn't have a problem if Kevin Stefanski ripped the players. He doesn't do that, but I wouldn't have a problem with it.
I believe he's the leader.
Yeah.
So if they cool with him doing that, that means everybody think that way. He wouldn't do this if there was people in the locker room that thought differently of the staff.
Right.
Because guess what? Certain people will pull you aside and be like, yo, what are you doing, bro? We need blah, 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 blah. We still got a chance.
Right.
Because the leader is doing that, that means he got a bunch of people behind him saying, you know what? We done gave with, listen, we throw our hands up too. We ain't got no time for it.
One of the issues with this is that we talk about Myles Garrett as a leader. And I feel like that's a role that we have really thrust him into because of his ability and because of his tenure. I don't think that I'm not trying to put him on the couch or anything like that. I don't pretend to understand the inner workings of Myles Garrett. But I've never gotten the impression that he's a natural leader or a very comfortable natural leader. I think it's been thrust upon him, again, because he's so good that we're just like, well, he's the best. Sometimes just by being really good at what you do, people just assume that you are in charge of that. You know what I mean? And I don't... Well, even when we hear about him as a leader, I don't think he's ever been fully comfortable in that role. And it's ideally on your team that your best player will also be your best leader. That's not always the case, though. Sometimes some of the best leaders are some of your more subpar players, and sometimes your best players aren't great leaders, and sometimes it's in between. And I think that he's an example of that.
I think that's fair. I think that's a problem the Browns have in general. I mean, Nick Chubb does all the right things.
Yeah.
Never says anything wrong.
But he also never says, come on, guys, follow me into the breach.
He doesn't seem like, and again, maybe behind the scenes he is a little more fiery. I don't know.
We've never gotten any word of that.
But the star players on this team don't appear to be like rah-rah leader guys.
Ray Lewis-y enough.
When people say he's lost the locker room, Stefanski has lost the team.
Yeah.
No one really drills down on what that really means.
Well, but do you think that's the case? Because you think Stefanski's lost the locker room.
I think Stefanski, every single week, he keeps Joe Woods on his staff, he loses credibility. Because because every week you don't make any chances. He's preaching to these people, we're trying to put you in the best position to make plays. And then you hear people on the defensive coaching staff say, it was tough because
that was embarrassing.
And so think about that. As a defensive player, you're like, how can you say that? You are a leader of men. Men aren't stupid. These guys aren't dumb. These dudes have been playing football for years, since they was kids. And they know Joe Woods is costing them games.
I think it's fair to say that the defense, listen, I don't know anybody personally in the locker room. I know you've had some communications but for the people that have been in the locker room, we've heard the team doesn't believe in Joe Woods, but that Kevin Stefanski has not lost the team. However, I do think if the team doesn't believe in Joe Woods, that you're probably right, that there has been some loss of faith in Kevin Stefanski. The question is, if he comes back for a fourth year and he hires a better defensive coordinator that the team believes in, can he regain that faith?
Yeah, he can get it back.
Yeah.
They just looking forward to him to be like, no, you the ultimate leader. You the dude over everything.
Right.
You can go change it. I remember being mad when I was upset. I used to do things like I would get CEOs on my report cards. My mom was very strict. And she would put me on punishment and say, you can't play video games for 9 weeks. You can't do this for a few weeks. You're not going to be able to go outside and do this. But the one thing my dad always did, which I always appreciated, was even when she would be upset that I got C's and she wanted to take it to another step and say that I can't play sports, my father knew that as a young black man, that's the only thing that's keeping this dude that's 6'4", 250 pounds from being in the streets, even though I got a mom and dad. So he would step in and say, well, yeah, you're not going to play no video games and you're not going to do that. But on the other hand, I'm going to go to bat for you because I think that's out of pocket. I understand the greater good. And when you look at, I respected him as the leader of our household because he understood the moment and he said, nah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And people look forward to Kevin Stefanski to say, when there's terrible play calls or when there's something not going right, they want him to walk over to that defensive room, knock on the door, and be like, we're not running that no more.
Yeah. And that's fair. I also don't think it's mutual. I understand Myles Garrett's frustration more than anybody else on this team. He's been here a long time. He and Bitonio have been here the longest, right? And he has to and Bitonio's had good players put around him on the offensive line, and Myles Garrett hasn't. I mean, they've had nothing but trash.
Zero.
Pretty much at defensive tackle. Clowney's been solid at times, but he's not a big-time pass rusher. He's a better run-stopping defensive end than he is a pass rusher. And when you look at the other great pass rushers in the league, they generally have a lot more talent around them than Myles Garrett does. So there are people who are stupid who say Myles Garrett's not that good because maybe he at times is not as impactful as some of the other pass rushers. And yeah, he doesn't put up sometimes the stats that those other guys do because those other guys aren't getting double teamed nearly as much as Myles Garrett is.
Right.
That's a factor. But for me, I hold Myles Garrett to such a high standard that even with his frustration and as pissed as he is about Joe Woods, and I agree with him, and as pissed as he is that Kevin Stefanski has left Joe Woods in there, I still think it's the wrong call, in my opinion, for him to handle it this way. Because there's other ways that he could do it.
Right. I'll agree with that. I think there's a definite other way you can handle yourself other than just throwing a grenade in the room and watching it go off, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's an opportunity for you to go up to talk to Coach Stefanski. If Myles Garrett really wanted to be affected, he'd go talk to the owner.
I wonder if that's happened. I wonder if Myles Garrett has sat down with Kevin Stefanski and put it out, hey, Joe Woods is not, we got to replace him.
If not, then what is the holdup? I mean, you got to man up and do that, don't you? Isn't that on him at some point?
Like Myles Garrett? Sure.
He's got to have that conversation.
I would wonder if they've had that conversation. Now,
he can't beat around the bush and just be like, boy, I wish there were some changes around here. You got to go right up, or else you can't be mad about it.
Right, and I'm sure,
in my opinion,
I have to believe Kevin Stefanski may not ultimately fire Joe Woods, but I would have to imagine if Myles Garrett wanted the audience for that kind of conversation, I would guess that Stefanski would give it.
And it's also up to Stefanski, though, if he is even sensing that might be an issue, to call Myles Garrett into his office and say, how do you feel about
that? That should have happened. Maybe it has.
Right.
Both those things should have already happened.
Yeah, if we're at this point and neither of those things have happened, then that is gross misconduct on both of their parts.
And I will always say this, though. You go look at Joe Thomas's career, and I asked him, one of the first questions I ever asked on this show was when Joe Thomas was on, I said, would you rather a Super Bowl ring or a gold jacket? And he paused, and he said, that's so hard. Because the ultimate goal of anybody to play is to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Joe Thomas, we see his career. The messed up part about it is we will never mention him as an all-time top 10 great player because he does not have anything to show for his time here. And he went through ineptness after ineptness, and he was loyal, and he said the right stuff. He never rocked the boat, but he retired with no rings and not even sniffing the playoffs.
No, that's true.
So when you watch that, nobody's going to go up to Joe Thomas and say, good job for not calling Rod Shazinski out. It was great that you didn't say anything bad about
He went the opposite. In fact, he always used to praise every coach as if they were great.
He praised them. And so it's like, you, Myles Garrett, you looking at this and be like, well, I saw the way it worked with that. Yeah. I know for a fact I'm probably going to get that gold jacket. But damn it, I need to have something to show for this. And right now they don't.